This is the second video for the first class of the social psychological perspectives on health. So in the first video, I talked about how biomedical approach attributes causes of ill health. In this video, I continue talking about the current approaches of psychological and social approaches to health. So first, current approaches, the psychological approach. So psychological approach is becoming increasingly influential in recent decades. So people are giving more attention, more emphasis, more importance to the psychological approach. In this approach, it thinks that the thoughts such as appraisal of symptoms or sense of self-efficacy and feelings such as mood and loneliness influence behavior like alcohol consumption or medication, and that also influence health outcomes such as depression or obesity. So this approach focuses on unique personal traits or cognitions. So when I talked about biomedical approach, I said that even though people have same disease, they tend to experience those diseases differently, illness differently. And psychological approach kind of gives answers to why people experience those diseases differently. That's because people have unique personal traits and cognitions. So maybe some people are very optimistic about their disease, and some people are very pessimistic about their disease. So either being optimistic or pessimistic is a trait, like a tendency of how people usually think and feel, or maybe even how they usually behave. And just because they are optimistic about their disease, maybe they think that they will overcome their disease, their illness, or maybe they can treat their illness. And just because they think in the way, maybe they feel more positive and maybe they will be more motivated to see a doctor or follow the instructions given by the doctors. And the limitation of the psychological approach is that it recognizes the importance of groups elements, but such elements are seen as secondary. So psychological approach takes into account the group elements by using like group interventions, but they use group interventions just because it's cheaper, you know. If doctors try to see each patient and then try to understand their psychological or mental illness, maybe it would take a lot more time and then it will cost more than seeing those patients in a group. So they use those group interventions, but that's only for saving money. They do not give much attention how group interventions have a unique effect on patients compared to individual interventions. Okay, so psychological approach takes into account of the impacts of thought, feelings on behavior and the health outcomes, but it doesn't take into account the importance or the effects of group. Okay, next, social approach. And in the social approach, it can be divided into social capital and what the social determinants of health. So let me explain first the social capital. This approach has been emerged from sociology, political science, and economics. The social capital is defined as a network's norms of reciprocity and trust among members of a neighborhood or community that develop through social interaction and mutual cooperation. Yeah, that's defined in this way in the textbook, page 7. And capital, according to the definition given by Oxford Languages, is wealth in the form of money or other assets. So in the case of the case of social capital, the capital does not refer to actual money, but it refers to some assets that people can gain from social networks or community. And this social capital provides the basis for civic engagement and empowers communities to overcome challenges. So sometimes there are problems that each individual cannot really overcome, but by tying each other, by helping each other, people could overcome, solve those problems. And there is one study saying that if you belong to no groups, but decide to join one, you cut your risk of dying over the next year in half. So this study basically is saying that only by belonging to just one group, the mortality rate would be in half for the next year. So you can see more concrete examples in the textbook by seeing the opening example of the football club. And yeah, so these communities or those who those who have a good community may be facilitated to share the health-related knowledge or maybe promote health norms and provide social support. So basically, this community with high social capital facilitates knowledge sharing, promoting healthy norms, and provides social support. So if some people do not know that eating junk food is not healthy, then because they are cheaper, they will eat a lot, and then they may be ended up with ill health. But if they know that, and then if someone in the community tell them that maybe eating too much junk food is not good for your health, then they will behave differently. And even if they know that eating junk food is not really good for their health, they may think that, well, yeah, it's something I know, but everyone eats this, and then maybe it's not really good for my health, but who cares? Everyone does that. If there's this kind of norm in the community, then maybe knowledge doesn't help. But if the social capital is well knitted, then maybe they would give more healthy norms. And then in this case, good knowledge helps to change their behavior. And then also in a good community, people are more likely to seek help from others. And then also they are more likely to provide help to others. So in a good community, people are more likely to provide and receive social support. However, there is a limitation in the social capital approach as well. So basically, it doesn't explain how the social capital helps people to be healthy. And this is because the social capital has only limited understanding of psychological processes, like how they share knowledge or how they develop such healthy norms, and then how they provide social support, and then how they think about those social support, because the social capital approach doesn't explain this how. It doesn't really tell us the mechanism of how social capital get under our skin to make us healthy. Another social approach is social determinants of health. So this focuses on the relationship between social inequality and health. So basically, when there is an inequality in the society, there is a gradation between individuals in terms of their health. So this approach argues that social conditions contribute to health outcomes. Social conditions may include where they are born, or where they grow, where they live, where they work, and what their age is. These kind of demographic information maybe sort of defined as social conditions, and then they argue that these social conditions affect our health outcomes. And then also this approach argues that inequality occurs through social injustice, such as poverty, unemployment, inadequate housing, social exclusion, and poor education. So maybe there is a prejudice in society, and then some people, like some minority, racial minority or ethnic minority, may be socially excluded. And nowadays, not only the ethnic or racial minorities, but also sexual minorities as well. So they are socially excluded, and then such exclusion contributes to the negatively contributes to health outcomes. And in these social injustice reduces access to health services and then behavior, and this will end up ill health. Okay, so maybe think about the case of racial minority. So let's think that maybe in some country doctors are all white, and then let's think that you are Black people in that country, and then you know that white people have some prejudice against Black people. And then you also know that all the doctors are white people, and then how you may feel. Would you be comfortable seeing a doctor? Maybe not. So basically, just because you Black people and then doctors are white people, and then white people in general have some prejudice against Black people, you may inhibit or you may refrain from seeing a doctor. And then by refraining from seeing a doctor, you would have worse health condition, and then maybe you might fail to treat some disease that may be easily treated by seeing a doctor. And then studies on the social determinants of health tackles inequality by the equal distribution of material resources through policy interventions. For example, they may try to distribute food to those poor people, or they try to provide recreational facilities, or maybe provide good housing, and then try to facilitate good employment, or more like equal employment. So by reducing the inequality between people, reducing the inequality in society, the studies in this approach try to improve the health condition of those like minority group people, or those who are in disadvantaged groups. Okay. However, again, there is a limitations in this social determinants of health approach. Basically, it lacks psychological perspectives. So just like we have seen in the biomedical approach, this approach does not explain individual differences. So, for example, why do only some people develop disease under a same social condition? So maybe some people in the disadvantaged group, not all the people develop disease, but maybe only some of them, And then why there is a difference, why there is individual differences between people. And then you may think that maybe some people are born to be strong and then they do not get ill, they never get ill. Or maybe some people have psychologically different from others. Maybe they think more optimistic. They may think more optimistically about their future or about their mental illness, the physical illness, so that maybe they can develop more, healthy body functioning, or maybe some people do not care about how they are being prejudiced. And then, they don't care how the white doctors would see them, would see, him or her. And then so that they would feel relatively more comfortable seeing a doctor, seeing a doctor. So basically, this is because people experience them differently. People experience the social conditions differently. Even though they are under the poverty, they may feel different. They may feel okay, fine, or some people feel terrible. The same social conditions do not lead people to think same or feel same. There is always a individual difference. And just as I have been saying that psychology takes this into account and helps us to understand when and how inequality puts negative impact on health and when and how such impact can be reduced. So as this class is, social psychology class, we give a lot of emphasis on how psychology is important for our health. But I think the important message of this class or this course is that psychology is also influenced by social factors, like what kind of groups they belong, or even how many groups they belong, and then which groups they are from. So these social factors influence our psychology, and then how our psychology functions influence how our body functions, or how we can maintain our health. So this is a sort of schematic representation of differences between approaches. So the x-axis or the vertical axis, vertical axis represent the analysis of social dimension of health, is a high or low. So basically, social approach puts much emphasis on, of course, social dimension. But compared to that biomedical approach, does not care about what kind of social conditions people are in. When people have a diabetes, that's a diabetes, regardless of their social conditions. And then medical doctors basically think that, the way to treat diabetes is equal, same to all the patients. But as we have seen, people experience these diseases differently. So it is important to take into account the psychological dimensions. And then psychological approach is here, and then it also gives doesn't give much attention to social impacts. The horizontal axis is about the analysis of psychological dimension of health. So it doesn't show here, but basically low and high. And then social and biomedical approach does not really care about the psychological impacts. Well, it doesn't mean that they don't care, but they do not take into account the psychological impacts, so psychological effects. And of course, psychological approaches takes into account the psychological impact, but it doesn't give much attention to the social impacts. So unlike these three approaches, social identity approach that we are going to learn in this course gives attention, gives emphasis to both social and psychological dimension. And then by integrating these two dimensions or approaches, I think that the social identity approach gives better understanding of how our health is influenced by social, psychological, and biomedical factors. Okay, I understand that you do not know yet about social identity approach, and then this is something I will talk in the next chapter and in the following chapters. Okay. So the goal of social identity approach to health is to develop an analysis that integrates both social and psychological dimensions and deliver social cures. The social cures is the term that these researchers use, and then it's kind of difficult to find an exact definition of the social cures, but social cures basically refer to a way of promoting and managing better health using the social identity approach. So basically, I think in most of the cases, when they talk about social cures, they talk about how belonging to groups change their psychological functioning, and then how such changes also influence their health outcomes. This approach has two emphases. First, it emphasizes the importance of social groups for health. Two, it emphasizes the psychological identification with those groups. So again, I think the psychological identification with those groups is something that you have never heard before. And then don't worry, this is something I will explain in the following chapters. But basically, this approach argues that health is determined by the degree to which individuals internalize those group membership as part of their sense of self. And this degree is called group identification, or in other words, this is the psychological identification with those groups. And then in short, it's said that group identification. And this group identification determines how individuals perceive situations and support from others. So you may think some issues differently as an individual from as a member of a group. So for example, and then maybe even as a member of one group from a member of another group. So for example, maybe think about some social issue and then think how you might think about it as a member of your family. And then when you think about some social issue as a member of family, you may try to think how your parents think about the issue. And then if you have brothers or sisters, you may think how my brothers or sisters think about this. And then you might also extend your thoughts to your relatives and then how my relatives think about this. But when you think about the same social issue as, for example, Hitotsubashi student, now you would not think how your parents would think about this issue, but instead you will think how your friends or peers in the university think about these issues. Maybe you even think about how your professors think about this issue. So by thinking as a member of different groups, your cognitions, your thoughts are different. And just because your thoughts and cognitions are different, how you may understand the issues and then how you may behave or how you may respond to the social issues would be different. And then if also how much you identify with those groups is important. And this is because the more you identify, the stronger your identification with your group is the impacts of how other members of the group thinks is stronger on your thoughts. Okay, and then this is basically how much you internalize others' thoughts and then group norms as your sort of standard or guideline to think about it. Okay, maybe it might sound too vague or ambiguous, but don't worry. This concept comes in more and more in the following lectures. So group identification affects understanding of medical symptoms and potential threats to health. Maybe if you think about cancer, and then if you have someone in your family who experienced cancer and overcame the cancer, then maybe you think cancer is something treatable. And then even if you get cancer, you think that all I need to do is to overcome the cancer. But if you lost someone from the cancer in your family, then you get the same cancer, your thoughts about the cancer would be totally different. So depending on which group you belong, and then also depending on how people in the group went through the same disease as a group, affects how you feel about those disease or the medical symptoms. And then also not necessarily the same disease, but how the members of your group respond to medical symptoms in general also affects how you as an individual respond to medical symptoms. And also group identification affects from whom they seek and receive support. So if you identify with certain group, you are more likely to seek and receive support from members of the same group, not others or not strangers. But even if you don't know someone in your group personally, but you may still try to seek and receive support from the members of your group. And then also how they accept support is different depending on their group identification. So when you receive support from from a member of your group, you're more likely to accept the support positively. Or maybe you do not suspect something like, maybe this guy is trying to deceive me, or maybe this guy has some bad intention behind the support. This is you might think when you receive support from someone who are not from your group. But when you receive support from a member of your group, you are more like you do not suspect any negative intention behind the support. And then this will makes you easy to be supported. And then also the outcome of support will be much better. And then finally, group identification affects how they behave. This is basically because uh, I because something I have been talking, you know. Group identification affects how you think and then also how you feel. And then when you behave, you may try to see how others in your group behave. And then basically you might want to be consistent in terms of your behavior with members of your group. So this is why how they behave is influenced by group identification. Okay, so I guess this is the end of chapter 1. And then also this is the end of the first class. So make sure that you answer the quizzes on Manaba. This is how I check whether you attended the class or not. So make sure that you complete the quizzes on the Manaba. And then also please feel free to ask any questions on Manaba if you have any, or any comments or how you felt about this lecture is welcome. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much. And then I'm looking forward to hearing from you.